You're always so noisy. You know how busy I am. Besides, I'm on a business trip. Don't call me for trivial things.
Trivial things? How could he say something so absurd when his own mother is struggling between life and death? I knew exactly what my husband was up to. He was spending time with his mistress on a fantasy island, completely detached from the harsh reality we were facing. I couldn't even consult him about the next steps for his critically ill mother because he hung up on me. However, my mother-in-law had left a letter expressing her true feelings. The content was shocking. We decided to fully honor her wishes and held her hand until the very end. She passed away with a peaceful expression on her face. My husband, so engrossed in his affair, didn't even attend his mother's farewell. His selfish actions would eventually backfire, bringing unexpected misfortune upon him. Unaware of this, he was likely enjoying what would be his last vacation, indulging in his desires without a thought for his family. Yes, the future that this man, who was consumed by his own desires and neglected his family, had envisioned was already beginning to crumble. Because of the letter his mother left. My name is Nancy. This year marks our 30th wedding anniversary. Our only daughter, born to my husband Andy and me, is now 25 and living independently. As a housewife, I live with my mother-in-law in her home. My father-in-law passed away about 10 years ago, and now the three of us live together, including my husband. I've had a good relationship with my mother-in-law since I got married, and we also meet with my brother-in-law, who lives nearby, once a week. My brother-in-law lost his wife early on and decided to live the rest of his life alone. As a result, he has always treated our daughter as his own, showering her with love and affection. From the outside, it might seem like I have an enviable marriage and a stress-free life. However, I have one major source of stress. That source is my husband. Since our daughter was born, he has never helped with parenting. He used his busy work schedule as an excuse to spend his days off at the casino. Our daughter has no memories of being held or even walking hand in hand with him. As she entered her teenage years, their conversations turned into arguments, and she gradually distanced herself from him. My husband's attitude towards me was the same. If I asked him to cut back on gambling, he would glare at me, and if I asked him to spend more time with the family, he would angrily berate me. I would argue back, but we never reached a resolution. I'm working hard for you and our daughter. If you have complaints, you can leave. That was his favorite line. How many times have I thought of leaving him? But I had my mother-in-law to support me. She always took my side. She often argued with my husband on our behalf. I owe a lot to her. At the very least, I wanted to be there for her in her final moments. My mother-in-law is currently battling a terminal illness. She has undergone several surgeries, but there has been no sign of recovery. She has been in and out of hospitals for years, enduring a long struggle. My brother-in-law frequently visits to check on her condition, but my husband dismisses her illness, saying, "She's still strong. She'll be fine. Take care of her." I have so many things I want to say to my husband, but for my mother-in-law's sake, I keep quiet to avoid further conflict. A woman's intuition is sharp, though. Sometimes, even the smallest actions can reveal unexpected truths. I suspect my husband is having an affair. He's been coming home late more often, claiming to be on business trips. Of course, I see right through this. His job doesn't require travel. And there's no reason for him to work past midnight. Still, I've tried to maintain a minimum level of communication with him as housemates and acknowledge each other's presence. One day, however, I reached my limit. As usual, he came home late, claiming to have worked overtime, and started humming in the shower. While silently picking up his discarded suit, something caught my eye. This may be. There was bright red lipstick on his shirt collar, obviously from another woman. Such a bold red color was unlikely to belong to someone our age. What had been suspicion turned into certainty, filling me with intense anger. I didn't wash the shirt, but instead hid it in a kitchen cupboard my husband never opened. More evidence of his infidelity kept appearing. It seemed like the mistress was leaving these clues intentionally, almost as a declaration of war, which I found terrifying. Nail tips, long hairs, tiny earrings, and condom wrappers appeared in his suit pockets. She must have been placing them there without him noticing. Her blatant audacity was chilling. One day, while picking up his clothes as usual, a message alert sounded. The message came from the inside pocket of his suit. Annoyed at his carelessness for keeping his phone there, I took it out and glanced at the screen. "Thanks for today. See you tomorrow at the usual place." As expected, it was from his mistress. Instinctively, my finger touched the screen, opening the messaging app and revealing their conversation. Apparently, my husband hadn't bothered to lock his phone. I hesitated, feeling guilty about snooping, but then I saw a message that made my blood run cold. The messages were filled with insults and mockery, calling me a gloomy old hag, and expressed a desire to divorce me and be with the mistress instead. They discussed waiting for a certain timing. That timing? I was speechless. They were waiting for my mother-in-law to pass away so they could be free from her watchful eyes and inherit her substantial estate. My hands trembled with rage as I held the phone. "Fine, I'll give you the divorce you want. I won't let this man have his way any longer." So I began preparing for the divorce. I discovered the mistress's name and searched for it online, quickly finding her personal social media accounts. These days, you can find anything with a search engine. While convenient, it's also terrifying how vast and invasive the internet can be. She was a 25-year-old woman, the same age as our daughter. There were many women with the same name, but the nail polish, earrings, and the photos of her with a man I recognized as my husband confirmed her identity. She posted pictures with him almost daily, seemingly unaware that her lover had a daughter her age. I gave my husband, who was leisurely soaking in the bath, a cold stare. "Enjoy your happiness while you can." I gathered all the evidence of his infidelity and waited for the right moment. The next day, while caring for my bedridden mother-in-law, she said, "Nancy, thank you for taking care of me without a single complaint. Ideally, I should rely more on Andy, but he's always been self-centered, and I've struggled with him too. I'm so grateful to have a wonderful daughter-in-law like you." She smiled warmly at me. Seeing her like this, I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the affair, so I just smiled back, feeling conflicted. "You are more family to me than Andy. Please take care of him despite everything." Her words gave me a bad feeling. Why was she speaking so formally? As expected, her condition worsened the next day, and she was rushed to the hospital. Holding my hand tightly, my mother-in-law's hand was warm, reflecting her kind nature. After receiving treatment, she stabilized and fell asleep in the hospital bed. I watched over her and then hurried outside to make a call. "What's going on?" "I'm heading to the hospital right now." "Thank you, Nancy, for being with her and taking care of her," my brother-in-law said, hanging up hurriedly. In contrast, my husband responded, "What's the big deal? Just because she's feeling a bit under the weather doesn't mean it's serious. Besides, you know I'm busy with work. That's why I'm counting on you, a housewife, to take care of her. Don't bother me with this." He hung up harshly, leaving me filled with frustration. That night, I took over from my brother-in-law, who stayed at the hospital with my mother-in-law. I went home to prepare necessities and a change of clothes for her hospital stay. We agreed that after a short rest, I would return to take over from him. In the quiet house, I glanced at the clock, and it was 1 a.m. My husband still hadn't come home. He usually would have been home by now. Tonight must be an overnight date with his mistress. But it didn't matter anymore. I no longer had the energy to be angry about my husband's actions. I just wished for my mother-in-law's recovery as I continued to prepare for her hospital stay without any emotions. At some point, I fell asleep and the soft morning sunlight woke me up. It was a peaceful morning, almost making me feel like yesterday's events were just a bad dream. Still half asleep, I spent a moment in this tranquil time. May today be a calm day. But, as if to betray my wish, my phone suddenly rang loudly. It was my brother-in-law.
Nancy, come to the hospital immediately. Mom's condition has worsened, and she won't wake up.
My mother-in-law was in critical condition. His words brought me back to reality, and I hurriedly grabbed my phone and rushed out of the house, hailing a taxi to the hospital. During the ride, I repeatedly called my husband, but he didn't answer. I kept trying until finally, he picked up, and his angry voice blared through the phone.
Do you know what time it is? It's 9 a.m. You know I'm busy with work.
He yelled as soon as he answered.
Where were you last night? We're going through a crisis here.
Even though I knew he was with his mistress, I retorted.
It's none of your business. I'm on a business trip. Don't call me for trivial things.
If he thought he could use work as an excuse, he was mistaken. According to his mistress's social media, they were on vacation in Hawaii, enjoying colorful ice cream. How could he go on a trip when his mother was in such a state? I tried to explain the gravity of the situation.
This is important. Listen to me.
But my desperate plea fell on deaf ears. Stop bothering me. I'm in the middle of a business meeting. I'll be back tomorrow. Talk to me then, he said and abruptly hung up. I couldn't convey anything important, leaving me with only frustration. What does it mean to be married? The taxi finally arrived at the hospital. A towering structure, familiar yet now imposing, seemed to loom over me. Inside this building, unlike the calm weather outside, stories of life and death unfolded. I took a deep breath and walked through the automatic doors. A nurse guided me to a quiet room. There, my brother-in-law sat hunched over, and my mother-in-law lay connected to numerous tubes, asleep. Nancy, Mom's condition suddenly worsened at dawn, and now she's like this. The doctors say the chances of her waking up are slim. The gentle smile she had given me yesterday was now gone, and she was in a deep sleep she might never wake from. I had been told to prepare for this moment, but facing it now, I couldn't hold back my tears.
Mom, please come back. Open your eyes.
Next, my daughter arrived, having rushed over after I called her.
Grandma! Grandma! Wake up! You promised you'd live to see me in my wedding dress.
My mother-in-law had been holding on, motivated by the hope of attending our daughter's wedding next year. The cruel reality that she might not fulfill that dream was devastating. My husband dismissed my call about this crisis as trivial while having an affair. Trying to talk to him was pointless, and no matter how much I pleaded, he wouldn't return from his distant vacation in Hawaii. Resigned, I told my brother-in-law that my husband wouldn't be able to make it. Actually, Mom gave me this letter. She told me to read it if something happened to her. Nodding, he handed me a letter written in my mother-in-law's careful handwriting. It was a will. The letter expressed her wish not to prolong her life with artificial measures if she was in a critical state. She wanted to be allowed to pass peacefully rather than remain in a coma, hoping to watch over her family from heaven. Tears streamed down our faces as we discussed it, but ultimately, we decided to honor her wishes. By the way, why isn't Andy here? My brother-in-law asked, puzzled and suspicious of my husband's absence during such a crucial time. I took the opportunity to tell the truth. He said he's too busy with work to come. My brother-in-law's brow furrowed, and his tone grew harsher as his frustration mounted. What kind of work could be so important? He doesn't do anything significant.
There's nothing in his job that should take priority over family.
He had a right to be upset. After all, he was the CEO of the company my husband worked for. The family business, started as a bedding store by their father, had grown into a top mattress manufacturer, favored by popular athletes for its high-quality, supportive mattresses. My brother-in-law had taken over as the second-generation CEO 10 years ago, inheriting his father's diligent and kind nature, which won over the employees. At first, he had no knowledge of bedding, but his diligent and mild-mannered personality, inherited from his father-in-law, won the hearts of employees, and as a result of his extensive knowledge of mattresses and development efforts, His mattresses caught fire as a mattress that relieves fatigue and allows sound sleep, and he began receiving large orders, especially from the sports industry. His dedication led to the development of a new type of mattress that revolutionized the industry. Unlike my brother-in-law, my husband had no sense of responsibility. He struggled with jobs, frequently changing them until his brother took him in and assigned him a minor role in the accounting department. "Brother, I heard my husband is on a business trip today. Is that true?" My brother-in-law shook his head, more suspicious. "A business trip? For an internal assistant? That's impossible." Realizing my husband was off with his mistress, even my brother-in-law couldn't defend him. "Actually, Andy is in Hawaii right now," I said, showing him the mistress's social media posts. Today's youth are remarkable. They share their private lives in real time on social media, and viewers instantly respond. The mistress, as young as my daughter, had just posted a photo of herself in a swimsuit at the beach with my husband. The slightly overweight man next to her, not showing his face, had 3 distinctive moles on his belly. There was no doubt it was my husband. What is this? Why is he in Hawaii, neglecting his work? And who is this woman? My brother-in-law stared in disbelief at the screen. I slowly explained the whole situation. "I can't believe it. I always thought he was a family man, leaving work on time to be with his family. I knew he was a bit wild in the past, but I didn't realize he was this negligent towards his work and family." My brother-in-law clenched his fists and, shaking with anger, exploded, "I won't let him get away with this any longer." He pulled out his phone from his suit pocket and called my husband. Judging it inappropriate to raise his voice in the quiet hospital room, he walked quickly out of the hospital while holding the phone to his ear. Surprised by the usually calm demeanor of my brother-in-law, I instinctively followed him. In the deserted hospital courtyard, he was shouting angrily into the phone. It was the first time I had seen him like this. "You knew about Mom's condition and still had the nerve to go on vacation in Okinawa. And you lied to Nancy about being on a business trip. We know everything about where you are and who you're with. You're fired, effective immediately." My husband seemed flustered on the other end, not expecting a call from his brother. "Mom hasn't been conscious since early this morning. She's critical. And you ignored Nancy's calls, dismissing them as trivial. If that woman is so important to you, then go disappear with her. Never show your face to us again." My brother-in-law's outburst shocked my husband, who began to stammer excuses. I could hear my husband's panicked voice through the phone. "You're out of the loop now. Nancy and I will make decisions about Mom from here on out. We've decided to honor her wishes and not perform any life-extending treatments. You won't see her breathing again." My husband, shocked and trying to regain control, began to shout back. "What are you thinking? Not doing everything to save her is murder. She might still wake up. I'll sue you. I won't let this happen." His frantic threats were pathetic. He had been eagerly waiting for this day in his messages to his mistress. We didn't have time for his nonsense anymore. I took the phone from my brother-in-law. "You can't possibly understand the pain your mother feels, unable to eat or walk, or her desire to end her life peacefully. You've ignored your family, spending your time with a much younger woman. You don't even know how your mother has been lately. You never visit her in the hospital. You have no right to say anything. As my brother-in-law said, don't ever show your face to us again." My husband, infuriated by my words, began to shout even more. "Don't act all high and mighty, outsider. You should be grateful for the wealthy life our family has given you. You're so petty, spying on me. No wonder I can't stand you. If you didn't want me to cheat, you should have been a better woman." This must be what they mean by fighting fire with fire. This was exactly the kind of absurd argument we didn't have time for. Calling me an outsider? Who do you think your mother really considers an outsider? Look into your own heart and think about it. And just so you know,
your life won't go as planned anymore. We have your mother's will."
He may not be able to fully understand my words. My husband seemed to be at a loss for words. "And if you didn't want your actions monitored, you should tell your foolish mistress. She's the one posting your entire vacation schedule for the world to see. You're coming back tomorrow, right? At least come see your mother one last time." I hung up the phone and hurried back to the hospital room with my brother-in-law. Shortly after, my mother-in-law's condition worsened. Upon hearing our voices, she quietly passed away, as if she had been waiting for us. Thus, my brother-in-law, my daughter, and I watched over my mother-in-law as she passed away. What a peaceful end. No matter how many times I said it, I could never express enough gratitude. We held my mother-in-law's hand as the warmth gradually faded away. The next day, my husband returned from Okinawa, but none of us even looked at him as we busily prepared for my mother-in-law's funeral. She was the wife of the founder of a major company, so the number of attendees was vast. We had to handle the numerous flowers and condolence messages, greet the monks, and coordinate with the funeral service providers. With my daughter's help, we managed to finish the preparations in time for the wake. My brother-in-law, who acted as the chief mourner, bowed deeply to each attendee, never forgetting the humility passed down from his parents. The wake and funeral spanned 2 days, and my mother-in-law was able to depart for heaven surrounded by many people. With the hectic but smooth completion of the funeral, we breathed a sigh of relief. Next, we had to deal with my divorce. In front of my brother-in-law and daughter, I handed my husband the divorce papers.
"A divorce? That's too much. And where's the solid proof that I was cheating? Just because of some social media posts, you can't prove it's me."
My husband, who had eagerly awaited a divorce in his messages to his mistress, was now vehemently refusing. The reason was likely the hefty alimony he would owe if he admitted to the affair. If he could calculate things so shrewdly, he should have applied that ability to his work. Or perhaps he dreaded losing the convenient maid who picked up after him, as he had never lived alone and couldn't handle any household chores. Disgusted, I presented all the evidence of his infidelity.
"Can you still claim you weren't cheating?"
His face turned pale. "Why do you have this?" "This is..." Panicking, he was interrupted by our daughter, who spoke for the first time.
"Having an affair with someone my age is disgusting. Do you even know this girl? She's notorious for targeting wealthy middle-aged men, extracting money from them, and then showing the evidence to their families to ruin them. She's been involved with the police multiple times and is infamous around here. I can't believe you fell for such a trap."
Her words stunned my brother-in-law and me. I had heard of such women who viewed affairs as a game, but I didn't know she was my daughter's classmate. My daughter recognized her immediately from the social media posts. She had initially kept silent out of shock, but she couldn't hold it in any longer. As we stood in shock, my daughter continued.
"You never cared about Grandma, and now you're involved with a girl young enough to be your daughter. I don't want you claiming to be my father. The thought of walking down the aisle with you at my wedding makes me sick. Just get a divorce and disappear."
Even my husband could not hide his shock at the words thrown at him by his daughter, and in the end he reluctantly agreed to the divorce.
"We will demand proper alimony from you and your mistress. Don't think you can escape. We've hired a lawyer, so be prepared to fight."
Cornered, my husband frantically asked, "What about Mom's inheritance? It's supposed to be split between me and my brother, right?"
"Sorry, but you won't get a penny. That's what Mom wanted. Even though you're her son, you didn't care for her during her illness and never visited. You have no right to her inheritance. Read it for yourself,"
said my brother-in-law, handing him the will. It clearly stated that the inheritance should be equally divided among my brother-in-law, my daughter, and me. While my husband could legally claim a portion, he was too lazy and dependent on others to know about it. Neither my brother-in-law nor I felt any obligation to inform him. Without the inheritance he had hoped for, abandoned by his family, betrayed by his mistress, and finally fired by his brother, my husband's downfall was complete.
There's no place for someone as incompetent as you in that company. I reluctantly hired you only because you were my brother and for the sake of your family, but you were always a burden to the company. Let's cut ties now. From now on, you'll have to live your life on your own, without relying on us."
Having lost everything, my husband stared blankly ahead, like a wax figure, devoid of life. Leaving him behind, we promptly exited the room. Afterward, alone, my ex-husband struggled with even the basics of daily life, including housework and cooking, let alone job hunting. With me and our daughter gone, he experienced a void in the now silent house, leading him to fall into depression and spend most of his days bedridden. The house quickly fell into disrepair, becoming an eyesore and a nuisance to the neighbors. Desperate, he repeatedly tried to contact his mistress, but upon learning that he didn't receive any inheritance, she cut off all contact, labeling him a fraud. What remained was the substantial alimony he owed me. I also claimed alimony from the mistress, but it was entirely paid from my ex-husband's depleted bank account. The mistress likely convinced him that it was all his fault. Eventually, the city authorities intervened with the neglected house, but finding no sign of improvement, they forcibly cleared it out. By that time, my ex-husband was already gone. With his savings depleted and unable to find a new job, he resorted to consumer loans, causing his debt to spiral. Now, he's likely moving from place to escape relentless debt collectors. Upon reviewing the mistress's social media history, it became clear she had been involved with several other married men besides my ex-husband. Her detailed posts and photos made it easy to identify her various partners with minimal investigation. While her past is unclear, it seems she cannot form a normal relationship with a single man. Her malicious behavior is unlikely to ever change. Through our lawyer, we will notify the wives of the men she was involved with. She will soon face substantial alimony claims, though she's likely unaware and still hunting for new targets among married men. After my mother-in-law's burial, the three of us visited her grave. "Mom, have you met Dad? I'm sure you're having a wonderful time catching up. Life without you is lonely, but we are moving forward with hope. Please watch over us." We pledged to live our new lives positively. A year later, under a clear blue sky, my daughter's wedding took place. She married the man she had been dating for a long time, who had supported her through her grief over losing her grandmother. Dressed in a pure white wedding gown, my daughter received countless blessings and vowed to share a new life with her partner. She chose to walk down the aisle with my brother-in-law, who had shown her more love than her father ever did. Having lost his wife and childless, my brother-in-law never imagined he would experience something like this. He shed more tears than I did, and the audience gave a warm applause as he walked my daughter down the aisle. The sky was perfectly clear. I'm sure the view from heaven was just as beautiful.
"Get out, you, a complete stranger parasite." Layla lashed out against me.
Ignoring my surprise, she continued.
"This house is in my dad's name, and as his real daughter, I have the right to live here. You're just in the way, so could you leave now?"
Hearing this, I was momentarily stunned. But then I burst into laughter. "Do you not know?" I deliberately paused there. Layla, curious about what I'd say next, held her breath and stared at me intently. To the moving company staffs, who seemed confused, I instructed them to move all the items into a spare room since there weren't many. When Layla tried to sneak in amidst the mess, I stopped her with my hand.
"This house is in my name. You and I are strangers. Don't just walk in."
When I said that, Layla's face turned red, and she shouted, "Who cares?" before storming off somewhere. I felt a surge of anger after being confronted like this so soon after Kevin's death. I was determined to make her regret it. I had finally raised in revolt. "My name is Emma Turner, a 39-year-old piano teacher. My husband, Kevin, was 6 years older than me and an entrepreneur who ran his own company. We met through work and gradually nurtured our love. When we started considering marriage, Kevin confessed something. He had been married before. In his 20s, he married his then-girlfriend and had a daughter, Layla. However, his ex-wife's infidelity soon came to light. She spent a lot of money to her affair partner and racked up so much debt, leading Kevin to gain custody of Layla after she relinquished her parental rights. Layla, raised in a single-parent household for a while, didn't seem to lack anything, especially as his business was thriving. But as his wealth grew, so did Layla's selfishness. In middle school, she always demanded high-end cosmetics and wanted to dye her hair too flashy. Kevin said she never listened, no matter how many times he told her she shouldn't. Growing up as she was, Layla showed disgust when Kevin introduced me to her as his new partner when she was in high school.
You? I'll never accept you as my mom. I have a beautiful mom and a rich, kind dad. That's all I need.
Although Kevin hadn't told Layla about her mother's affair, she seemed to hold her beautiful mother in high regard. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. Ultimately, Layla never accepted me, so we only got married after she turned 18, graduated high school and started working. I thought she was a grown-up by then, but I never imagined things would turn out this way. Kevin and I never wanted children of our own. To Kevin, Layla was his only child. And he feared what she might do if we had a child together, saying she wouldn't handle having a half-sibling well, as she even didn't accept me as her mother. As for me, being in my late 30s and hearing stories about raising their children from my friends, I doubted my suitability for child-rearing. Especially considering Layla's open hostility, I had no confidence in dealing with a child in a rebellious phase, real or imagined. So we agreed, no children for us, just a peaceful life together as a couple. That's how we got married. 2 years ago, after Layla turned 18 and started working, we got married, and since then, we lived ordinary days as a couple. But those peaceful days ended within those 2 years. Kevin was diagnosed with cancer. It was already in the late stage, and all we could do was prolong his life. I was so shocked I couldn't process anything, not even the prognosis or treatment plans. Before I knew it, Kevin was hospitalized and began treatment. Coming home to an empty house, I felt worn out. And then, someone appeared, adding to my troubles. Yes, that Layla. Technically, as Kevin's stepdaughter, she was related to me, but we never lived together, so I didn't feel much connection. It wasn't strange that a daughter would know where her father lived, but how did she know about Kevin's cancer? Dad has cancer, right? You're so out of it, he told me. Kevin must have told her that out of concern, but honestly, both Layla and I weren't really happy about that. However, Layla seemed to have something in mind and, with a sly smile, said this. I guess I have to look after you now, and of course, take care of Dad. You, his new wife, can't compare to me, his real daughter. Leaving me with those provoking words, she left. I immediately contacted Kevin and relayed the conversation. He apologized, saying, I thought Layla had grown up. I'm sorry for causing you distress. Kevin wasn't to blame, and I wanted him to focus on his situation. Not wanting to burden a sick person, I replied cheerfully, don't worry, I'll handle her. But honestly, I wasn't confident. Already doubting my aptitude for parenting, how was I supposed to deal with someone openly hostile towards me? Besides, with nearly a 20-year age gap, could I, a 39-year-old, really connect with a 20-year-old Layla? These thoughts swirled in my head, leaving me exhausted. It's useless to overthink. For now, I'll just focus on work and supporting Kevin. With that thought, I tried to sleep. But worry for Kevin kept me awake. The next day, my students and their parents could tell something was wrong. Before I knew it, 6 months had passed. During this time, there weren't many changes in my job, and Kevin was trying to fight his illness, living each day to the fullest. However, one worrying issue persisted. That was Layla's presence, since she moved into the neighborhood half a year ago. I think I've lost over 10 pounds in these 6 months. Even now, as I held the baby in my arms, I couldn't help but wonder why I had to do this, furrowing my brow in doubt. The baby's name is Ashley. And, believe it or not, she's Layla's child. That makes me, by extension, Ashley's step-grandmother. Taking advantage of this, Layla often dumps Ashley on me. Half a year ago, Layla moved nearby, as she had declared. I initially thought she would be alone, but she arrived with Ashley, her biological daughter. After graduating high school at 18, Layla fell for a club promoter and spent most of her salary on him. Kevin had told me her mother was similar, so it seemed like a case of like mother, like daughter. But Layla's romance didn't pan out. She ended up pregnant and, surprisingly, even quit her job. It seemed like a convenient excuse to escape for someone who was always troublesome and selfish. Apparently, he caused a scene in front of his club, got some compensation, and now receives regular child support from him. That's why she had Ashley, but a few months later, she learned of Kevin's illness. Incredibly, Layla saw this as an opportunity. I mean, Dad's got loads of money, right? If I play nice now, maybe he'll leave me a big inheritance. I remember being shocked to hear Layla's voice talking like that to someone. A man, as far as I could tell from her phone conversations. But who it was didn't matter. It was clear Layla only saw her father as a cash cow. And she probably saw me, his spouse with a right to half of his estate, as an obstacle. I even caught her asking someone over the phone how a stepmother could renounce an inheritance. I couldn't bring myself to tell Kevin, who was fighting so hard to live. It would be too cruel for him. So, I kept quiet, trying to process it all by myself. Layla took advantage of my silence and started bossing me around more after moving. At first, it was just I'm going to the bank, watch Ashley for a bit. But then it escalated to I'm visiting Dad in the hospital or Ashley's dad insists he wants me to talk about her to him. He's suddenly interested in his daughter now. And so, I became her regular babysitter. Of course, without any compensation for it. I couldn't bring myself to ask for money, considering Ashley was my step-grandchild, and I was more afraid of something happening to her if I refused. Layla's demands escalated until she recently said like this. I'm going on a trip with friends. Can you watch Ashley for about 3 days? You can, right? You're always home anyway. I'm home, yes, but only because my piano students come for lessons in the evening. I wanted to argue, but knowing Layla would just retaliate, I simply agreed. Ironically, I find Ashley so adorable. Despite thinking I couldn't handle childcare, the baby charms tickled my maternal instincts. But hearing about the trip gave me a headache. With significant expenses for Kevin's treatment each month, and furthermore, taking care of Ashley for 3 days would add to my costs. I've been covering all expenses for Ashley's diapers and formula. I didn't want to use Kevin's money for this since I decided to take on this myself, and initially, it wasn't too burdensome. But as costs rose, so did my stress. Sometimes, I'd catch myself wondering why I, as her step-grandmother, was doing what Layla, her mother, should be doing. Layla doesn't even recognize me as her mother. Yet she conveniently uses me like this. I can't say it doesn't upset me. Still, I did what I could for innocent Ashley, but I was reaching my limit. I planned to talk to Layla when she returned, to tell her to take responsibility for her daughter. But right after Layla left for her trip, I got a call from the hospital and rushed out. Arriving there, the busy nurses and doctors made it clear that Kevin's time was near. Sensing something, Ashley started crying, but the nurses told me not to worry. Kevin was already unconscious, and it didn't take long for his passing to be announced. His face was peaceful, though. They say a person's hearing lingers for a bit after death, so maybe Kevin departed peacefully, hearing Ashley's cries and my voice. That thought made me burst into tears. Kevin's wake went smoothly, but Layla was nowhere to be seen. I informed her of Kevin's passing right away, but her response was shocking. Oh, really? But I've extended my trip and can't come back soon. You, as his spouse, can handle the funeral arrangements, and nobody will object. You're his wife on the family register, so take care of the rest. And take care of Ashley too, she said before hanging up. I wanted to scream, but with Ashley there, I somehow held it back. Kevin's relatives asked why Layla wasn't there, but fearing a commotion, I made up a plausible excuse about her trip extension. Even the time of the interment, Layla never showed up, and the only one who saved my nearly broken heart was Ashley. For a whole 2 weeks after Kevin passed away, Layla had vanished without a trace, ignoring all attempts to contact her. But then one day, when the doorbell rang and I answered it, there stood several robust, fresh-faced men, who introduced themselves as movers. Peeking behind them, I saw Layla, grinning slyly.
"Parasites, which is a stranger need to get out,"
she snapped at me. Ignoring my shock, Layla continued.
"I've given up the apartment I was living in, and starting today, I'll be living here. After all, this house is in Dad's name, and as his biological daughter, I have the right to live here. You're just in the way, so can you leave right now?"
Hearing this, I was taken aback for a moment, but then burst into laughter. "Do you not know?" I deliberately paused there. Layla, curious about what I'd say next, held her breath and stared at me intently. Since I, her usually docile stepmother, suddenly started laughing, she must have felt more terror than surprise. I instructed the bewildered movers to temporarily store all the stuff in an empty room since there wasn't much. As Layla tried to sneak in amidst the confusion, I stopped her with my hand. "Do you think it's okay to enter someone's house without permission? This house is in my name. We're not legally related through adoption, and our family registers are different, so technically, we're strangers. Besides, you've never acknowledged me as a mother, right? So, don't start acting like a daughter now, especially after using me as a convenient babysitter and looking down on me all this time." Saying this, Layla looked frightened. Unperturbed, I continued, "So, your trip is over, I guess I can give Ashley back to you. After all, you are her mother, so take care of her properly." Angered, Layla yelled, "Who cares?" and stormed off, leaving Ashley behind. The movers looked on with puzzled expressions. It was outrageous how Layla tried to move in without any notice right after Kevin's death, cursing at me like that. I felt a rising anger within me. I was determined to make her regret it. I had finally decided to revolt. In the end, Layla just dumped her belongings in my room and never showed her face again. I heard she had given up her apartment, but where she was living and how remained a mystery. However, my hands were full with taking care of Ashley. Fortunately, Ashley was familiar with my face since she was a baby and had seen me almost every day, so she was very attached to me. I had a stock of milk and diapers, and several friends who had experience with childcare gave me advice after I explained the situation. I had no choice but to brace myself. Since things had come to this, I would take full responsibility for Ashley until the matter was settled. I've decided to do so. During lessons at home, Ashley would sleep peacefully, seemingly comforted by the sound of the piano. Some parents, aware of my situation, even offered to watch her while I was teaching. News about Layla had somehow leaked out, and Kevin's relatives occasionally came to check on us. When I had to leave for lessons or work, someone would take turns watching Ashley. Although Kevin was gone, the network he left behind and the support of the warm-hearted people around me allowed me to live a peaceful life. Then, 2 months after Layla disappeared, she suddenly reappeared before me. She was accompanied by a police officer and a child welfare worker, falsely accusing me of kidnapping Ashley. The police officer explained that they couldn't take action until they verified the situation. Layla was yelling, "Arrest her quickly. She stole my child. Just because she doesn't have her own kids, she's so presumptuous," and to the child welfare worker, "Isn't this your job? Hurry up and take the child away from this woman." The police officer talked to me calmly, so I explained the whole situation to him. The police officer looked a bit astounded. It seemed they realized that Layla was acting out of spite and frustration. The child welfare worker tried to calm Layla down, but her words fell on deaf ears as Layla's anger had peaked. Realizing this was going nowhere, I boldly stated, "You are the one who dumped Ashley on me. All the neighbors know it, as do Kevin's relatives. You can't claim ignorance after running away that day, and calling the police might even be considered obstruction of justice, don't you think?" I said this nonchalantly, and the police officer nodded in agreement. Technically, it might be more accurate to call it a false accusation. Especially since Layla had even filed a complaint against me. But I figured Layla wouldn't understand the complexities, so I simply told her she was lying and obstructing the officer's duty. The word obstruction of justice seemed familiar to Layla, and she began to falter, so my approach was highly effective. I continued to explain further.
A mother who dumps her infant on someone else to go on a trip, and then does something like this, seems more problematic, don't you think, officer?
I said this, turning my gaze to the child welfare worker, and it seemed Layla finally grasped the situation.
Well, fine. I'll let you off this time.
I thought to myself, what is she forgiving? And the police officer started to talk to Layla about having a discussion at the police station. It made sense. After filing a false complaint, they couldn't just say, okay, dismissed, and be done with it. Layla, pale-faced, turned to us as the child welfare worker added something that seemed like the last straw, and she completely panicked.
It's not my fault. It's all her fault.
She kept repeating nonsensical things, but the police officers said thank you to me and left for the time being. A younger officer who seemed like a subordinate came later and took a brief statement from me, but my innocence was quickly cleared thanks to many people vouching for me. I'm sure everyone was surprised when the police suddenly contacted them, but they immediately provided testimonies to help me as soon as they heard my story. Later, I heard Layla was not prosecuted but received a stern warning. After being reprimanded by the police, maybe she felt down, she didn't show up for about 3 months. It was about time to decide on Kevin's inheritance, but since Layla is his biological daughter, she's an heir. That's why I had to contact her. But with no idea of her whereabouts and all my attempts being ignored, I hired a detective to locate her and then had professionals repeatedly reach out to her. I even had a lawyer send certified mail and made various attempts, but Layla kept ignoring everything. Before I knew it, we reached the first anniversary of Kevin's death. At the almost same time, I received an email from Layla. It said she didn't want to be involved anymore. So, I went to family court and filed for an inheritance petitioning. Layla didn't respond even then, leading to no discussion, and ultimately, the family court decided on the inheritance division. But despite ignoring everything, Layla showed up at my house, upset with the outcome.
I'm his real daughter, and getting nothing is absolutely wrong. What's the meaning of this?
It seemed she didn't want to go through the hassle, but still wanted the inheritance. She probably thought she'd automatically get her share as a daughter. But learning she wouldn't get a penny, she was furious. Her audacity to show up only when it suited her interests was astounding, but I decided to calmly tell her the truth. Do you know when the inheritance period began? Confidently, Layla answered. The day the family court's decision came out, right? Hearing this, I laughed and said, no, you knew of your father's passing the day it happened, so the inheritance period actually began over a year ago. To make it clear to Layla, who didn't seem to get it, I explained further. She claimed it was unfair not to receive her share, but the family court had calmly judged based on Kevin's will and the situation at the time. Firstly, Kevin's will stated he didn't want to give Layla a single penny and wished for me to inherit everything. Normally, this would infringe on Layla's rightful share, which means she could have received half of the inheritance. However, despite my sending registered letters and the involvement of professionals and the court, Layla remained silent. Moreover, Kevin had written in his will, if Layla will abandon the inheritance discussions, I don't want her to have any share, which led to me inheriting everything. The fact that I was taking care of Ashley, Kevin's granddaughter, also played a role. Upon hearing this, Layla retorted, I took care of Dad when he was in the hospital. You just took Ashley from me and stayed home. I contributed to Dad, this isn't right. But I stood my ground.
Still lying after all this? You were out having fun, weren't you? When I took care of Ashley, I checked with the hospital, and as expected, you hadn't been there. I was the one who brought Ashley for clothes changes and stuff. Visitors have to write their names when entering the ward, you know? The evidence is all there.
The photographs of the hospital's visitor log with dates and times were useful. This was one of the reasons the court ruled in my favor for the full inheritance. Layla, grinding her teeth in frustration, still tried to fight back. Fine. Then I'll sue for infringing on my share. But over a year had passed since the inheritance period began, so that right was time-barred. When I told her this, Layla, unable to comprehend further, exclaimed, "That can't be true. No way, that's cheating. Why can't I, his real daughter, get any of his inheritance?" She began to panic and fluster. Eventually, she dejectedly tried to leave, so I asked, "What about Ashley?" "I don't have time for that now. I'm barely managing my own life. How can I take care of a child?" she said irresponsibly and fled. I couldn't help but find the situation absurd, and a few days later, Layla made her last stand.
"I want Ashley back, she's my child."
It was a sudden change of heart from her previous refusal. Indeed, Layla is Ashley's biological mother, and to me, Ashley is my step-granddaughter. Layla looked triumphant, but I calmly responded, "Since that trip, you haven't once taken Ashley or cared for her. Don't you have anything to say about that?" Layla replied, "Just you wanted to take care of her, right?" I then asked her, "Have you been receiving government child support for over a year while I've been taking care of your child?" Layla looked puzzled for a moment but then laughed and said, "I have the right to receive it as a mother, so it's fine." I smiled at that. Layla, surprised by my sudden change of attitude, asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" I told her, "That means you've been fraudulently receiving government child support without actually taking care of your child. If this gets out, you will be subject to punishment and be required to repay it. Considering you've already caused trouble with the police, I doubt this will just slide." Layla's face turned serious. Actually, I had recorded the entire conversation. It was automatically saved to the cloud, so even if Layla destroyed anything, there would be no problem. It could be considered destruction of property, and either way, Layla was bound to end up with the police. Finally realizing everything, Layla's face looked like she almost cried and said,
"You didn't report this, did you?"
She probably meant to the authorities. I confirmed that I had indeed reported it. Layla's face turned even paler, her hands trembling at her mouth.
"It can't be true."
"It's true. They said they'd investigate, and I told them I'd provide any evidence I had. This conversation will be submitted as data too." Layla collapsed right there, seemingly out of strength for any further retort, just mumbling complaints unheard. To Layla, I delivered the final blow. "I hired a professional to find you and send a certified letter, so I know about the boyfriend who's been supporting you. After you gave up your apartment, you probably told him some story to move in with him without his knowledge, right?" Layla looked up at me. Having a partner to help financially can lead to arrest for fraudulent receipt of child support if the person isn't actually raising the child. Layla, not wanting to raise a child alone, had moved closer when her father contacted her and dumped Ashley on me. She then found a boyfriend and gave up her apartment, intending to take over my house and live with him. But the house was already in my name due to a lifetime gift, so that plan failed, and she likely moved in with her boyfriend under false pretenses. Although it was mostly conjecture, Layla's face confirmed it all as true. Then she made one last attempt. "Fine, I get it now. I need Ashley to receive child support, so give her back to me now. Besides, seeing you with Ashley, looking all happy, really annoys me. That's why I came all this way to get her back," she said, giving a childish reason for demanding Ashley's return now. Angered by her view of Ashley as just a tool for money, I responded without losing my composure. "Okay, but that's after a proper discussion with Ashley's father, right?" Ignoring the dumbfounded Layla, I turned towards the living room and called, "Skylar, can you come here for a moment?" Hearing a familiar name, Layla got cold feet and tried to flee, but her legs wouldn't move. Just then, the sound of footsteps approached. A man appeared with a cheerful Ashley carried in his arm. His name is Skylar Olson, Layla's ex-husband and Ashley's biological father. I had heard from Layla that Skylar was a club promoter with no sense of responsibility, which led her to leave him, but I doubted whether such a man would pay alimony and regularly provide child support. If he were that responsible, he probably would have changed the job for her and their baby and got married her. With these thoughts, I had a detective look into Layla's past during the inheritance case. It turned out Skylar was just an ordinary office worker with no past as a club promoter. When I boldly reached out to him using Ashley's name, he responded easily. When he met Ashley, Skylar, with tears in his eyes and said, "I finally got to meet my daughter. I was so happy when you contacted me." Actually, our divorce was due to Layla's infidelity. She used her status as a mother to take Ashley away, and I've just been paying child support quietly. As he said this, Skylar's gaze towards Ashley, holding her tiny hand, was filled with the love of a father. I thought again that parents who can love and raise Ashley properly should be the ones to take care of her, so I repeatedly consulted child welfare services and the administration about this situation. Legally, Layla still had custody, but it was clear from her actions over the past year that she was not raising Ashley properly. Pushing her child onto a hostile person only when convenient, without any formal adoption, is this really how a mother should act? As I kept making my case, the government workers began to feel sorry for Skylar and Ashley. I hadn't just been working on the inheritance case this past year. I had been thinking about getting Ashley back to where she should belong as soon as possible. I paid extra to the lawyer handling the inheritance to get advice on helping Skylar regain custody, all done quietly behind the scenes. Everything was ready. Skylar, now 26 and being talked about as the next section chief, had no financial issues. There were many people willing to vouch for Skylar's character and his faithful payment of both child support and living expenses for Layla, despite her awful treatment. It was clear who had the advantage in any custody battle. Layla, who neglected Ashley and saw her as a hindrance to her romantic relationships, left her with a stepmother she disliked. Despite enduring Layla's mistreatment, Skylar showed sincere concern and often visited to check on Ashley after learning about the situation. I knew about Layla's problems, including her fraudulent receipt of government child support and her problematic boyfriends. "Your current boyfriend is the real club promoter, right? The one you talked to on the phone before. But there's another boyfriend, right? The one who has been supporting your life financially. You've contributed too much to the club promoters and are now drowning in debt. The other guy figured out your double life and left, and the promoter boyfriend is about to ditch you because he can't get more money out of you. Compared to you, Skylar is far more respectable and a loving father." My words were the final blow, and Layla cried loudly, rubbing her forehead on the ground in apology. No one forgave her. She had treated her child as a tool for money and used both me, her stepmother, and Skylar, her ex-husband, for her club visits. Finally, her karma caught up with her. After a while, with the help of my lawyer and others, the court ruled that Skylar would have custody of Ashley. Some of my acquaintances, students' parents, and Kevin's relatives asked if it was really okay. They probably thought it was too easy to give her back to him only because he was her biological father, after all my hardships over the year. Indeed, I did struggle with the decision, but I didn't want to keep Ashley away from a father who loved her. Before talking about Layla's current situation, let me explain what happened. First, Layla was arrested for child support fraud. The fact that she wasn't actually raising her child, the existence of her boyfriend, and another man who was supporting her life played a significant role, leading to her arrest for fraud. She received a probation without actual sentence, but soon after, the custody battle erupted, and she screamed in despair. Unable to run away and with various evidence and testimonies against her, the court ruled it was fair to transfer custody to Skylar. Layla lost everything. Ashley, her boyfriend, her another boyfriend who supported her life, and even her savings, her reputation, and everything. She was working as a temporary worker, but due to poor work performance, she was laid off at the worst time. She ended up losing her job and became so destitute that she was practically living on the streets. With no address, she couldn't get a decent job, and her lack of work history and qualifications led to continuous rejections even for live-in jobs. This was a clear case of reaping what she sowed. As for me, I was living modestly without using Kevin's inheritance. I believe Kevin wanted to share his inheritance with Ashley, his granddaughter. But he feared involving her in any trouble by writing about her in his will, so he didn't. So, I made sure to give Skylar gifts from Kevin's inheritance for Ashley's special occasions. Recently, Skylar, who moved nearby, confessed his feelings to me.
I've grown to love you while visiting Ashley. I didn't say anything because of the difficult times. Ashley sees you as her mother. I know it's disrespectful to you as a widow and to Kevin as my former father-in-law, but please, will you become my family?
Hearing that, I couldn't help but grow feelings for him. Actually, there was more to Kevin's will. It wasn't related to the inheritance, but he concluded with this. If you find someone you love after my death, please be happy with that person. Your happiness is my happiness. Kevin, usually a man of few words, must have put his feelings into those words as best as he could.
I'm thinking about what's best for Kevin, Skylar, and Ashley. I would never have thought at the time that a few years later I would also be present at Ashley's first day at elementary school. Why is nobody here? Dad? Mom?
I called out to my parents, but there was no response. The house was unusually quiet when I returned from violin lessons. As I headed to the living room, I found a piece of paper on the table. It was a message from my parents. We never thought you lacked talent to this extent. You're not our child. Go wherever you like. When I read it, I realized I had been abandoned. I remember not even being able to cry from the shock. Unsure of what to do, I went to my violin teacher.
Julie!
I spoke of what happened at home, biting my lip hard.
They said they don't need me because I'm just ordinary. I've been abandoned. What should I do? It's okay. You're not just ordinary.
My teacher, Julie, reassured me, embracing me gently. Her words brought me comfort, and tears streamed down like a waterfall.
But now I'm all alone. You're not alone. I'll be with you. Really? Of course. I'll be with you from now on.
Okay. Julie always insisted I was not ordinary. Thanks to her, I started practicing the violin again, which I had been reluctant to see since that day.
You'll become a great performer.
Will I?
If you work hard, you will. The ones who'll regret it are your family who abandoned you.
5 years later, after rigorous training with Julie, I unexpectedly reunited with my family at a concert. I was more determined than ever, aiming to prove them wrong. As a result, my parents ended up apologizing to me. My name is Hannah. I'm now 18 and a professional violinist, performing internationally. My current success is due to meeting someone special.
Maybe Hannah should try the violin like her sister. That might be a good idea. She could become like Sophia.
Exactly. Sophia, my older sister by 3 years, had been learning the violin on our father's recommendation. He graduated from a music university and now works at a music production company. My mother also learned the violin from a young age. Given this, it seemed only natural that I would learn the violin like my sister.
From today, Hannah, you'll learn the violin here with your sister.
Okay.
Then, please take good care of her.
At 7, I met my violin teacher, Julie. She taught me various things, starting from scratch. It was a fun time for me, but not for my sister. Sophia complained to our mother.
What's going on? What happened? Nothing's wrong. Why do you favor Hannah over Sophia? Sophia's more talented. But Hannah is still a beginner. Our mission is to make Sophia a great violinist.
My mother's complaints continued. I vividly remember that scene even now. Sophia was smirking during the whole episode. From then on, mine and Julie's positions worsened.
Hannah, don't just play around. Try to learn from your sister. Right, Sophia's a genius, unlike you. Learn from her. Yes.
I was trying to keep their mood as light as possible, despite my young age. My only joy was playing the violin with Julie.
You seem down, huh?
It's nothing.
You know, there's nobody else here. You don't have to hold back. It's just, being at home isn't fun anymore.
I slowly started to talk about what was happening at home. That alone made me happy at the time. However, as days passed, the way my parents treated me could no longer be described as familial.
Huh?
Isn't dinner unusually fancy today?
Remember the violin recital the other day?
Oh, the one where Sophia came first?
You forgot?
How could I? It was a celebration for my sister's accomplishment in a competition. I tried to join in, but Sophia stopped me.
Hey, why is Hannah here?
Huh?
She's not involved, right?
I couldn't believe she would say that. I thought surely my parents would intervene.
Well, yeah. Indeed, today is Sophia's celebration. That makes sense.
I felt a jolt. It was like my heart was being gripped.
Then, Hannah, why don't you go to your room?
Why?
Because today is my day.
I looked at my father, hoping for support.
Stay in your room until I say otherwise.
No one there was on my side. Why did I have to go to my room? Aren't we family? I struggled to hold back tears as I went to my room. Why is it always me? I covered myself with the blanket in my room, letting my tears flow unseen. Soon, my pillow was soaking wet. I don't know how much time passed. When my tears had dried and I was about to leave the bed, I heard, "Hannah?" My sister was outside my room. I opened the door apprehensively.
What? Were you crying?
No, I wasn't.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Here. What she brought was leftovers from dinner.
You must be hungry, right?
Yeah. Huh. It was just leftovers, after all.
You didn't do anything, so it's only natural, right?
I couldn't say anything back.
Make sure you wash the dishes after eating. We're going to have cake now. Don't come out, okay?
Okay. I had no choice but to comply. I couldn't help but wonder how long this would go on. My existence at home became more and more insignificant as days passed. It was during the summer break. We're going on a trip next week.
That's quite sudden.
Got some time off. So, where are we going? How about Cancun? Sounds good. My family was excitedly discussing the trip. I stayed quiet, trying to be invisible. Because any comment I made would be instantly shot down. Then, the day before the trip. Is everyone ready?
I am.
What about you, Hannah?
Yes, I'm ready.
Despite the limited conversation, I was excited to go on the trip with them. But the next day, I was taken somewhere else.
Where is this? This is your grandmother's house.
I had never met my grandparents before. Take good care of Hannah.
What about everyone else?
We're going on the trip, of course. You stay here.
Wait! Don't leave me!
My pleas fell on deaf ears. My parents left without looking back. I could only watch as they drove away. My grandmother, much like my mom, showed no interest in me.
Grandma, I'm hungry. I didn't sign up to feed you. Figure it out yourself.
But... She glared at me. Luckily, I had some money from my parents, so I went to the nearby supermarket. I felt the stares of others, but had no time to worry about that. I managed to buy some bread and a drink and went back home.
Where were you at this hour?
I went to the supermarket to buy food.
You'll get me in trouble.
But then...
Don't talk back.
My grandmother raised her hand to hit me. Then, I heard a voice stopping her.
What are you doing? Are you awake? That's not the issue. What's going on here? She won't listen to me.
My grandfather came to me and said,
I'm sorry. If only I weren't like this. It's okay.
I later learned that he had been ill for several years and spent most of his time in bed. He had come to help me when he sensed something was wrong. From that point on, my grandmother stopped being oppressive towards me.
What are they thinking, leaving their daughter behind like this? But I'm not lonely with Grandpa here. That's good. You're a good girl, Hannah.
I felt like I finally had someone on my side. My grandfather's presence had a huge impact on me. The trip lasted about a week, and he made sure I didn't feel lonely. On the day my family returned.
"We're here to pick you up, Hannah."
My angry grandfather confronted my mom.
"What were you thinking, leaving your daughter behind? Are you okay with getting up? Don't change the subject. This is a family matter, stay out of it. Don't play dumb."
My mom ignored his words and grabbed my arm.
"I can't deal with this. We're leaving." "Wait, please. Just come along."
I ended up leaving without even saying a proper goodbye to my grandfather.
"You didn't say anything unnecessary, did you?" "I didn't." "Well, it's not like we'll see them again." "Does that mean?"
The brief happy time I had spent there had passed. Even when we got home, the house was filled with laughter about the trip. Unable to bear the atmosphere, I went to my room.
I wish I could grow up faster.
Unfortunately, my misfortunes were far from over. About 2 months after that hellish trip, my mom seemed unusually busy one morning.
"Why does this have to happen now? Is something wrong?"
I asked, noticing her unusual demeanor.
"Yes, your grandpa just passed away."
"Grandpa!"
"So I'm busy, don't get in the way, okay?"
"Yes."
"He really caused a lot of trouble."
Saying that, my mom started making phone calls. I don't remember much about what I did after that. My grandpa's death had a huge impact on me. The only thing I clearly remember is my mom's bothered expression during the wake and funeral. Before I knew it, I was 8 years old. And the next day, I had violin practice. The only solace for me then was the time I spent with my teacher, Julie. But I was concerned about how busy my family seemed. I had stayed in my room, so I could only guess what was going on from the sounds I heard. The next day.
"Come on, it's time for your violin lesson. Get ready."
"Yes." Then I realized something. My sister, Sophia, wasn't preparing at all, just smirking at me.
"What about Sophia?" "Oh, we don't need to send her to those lessons anymore." "What?" "Just go, hurry up."
I had no idea what was about to happen. It was after my violin lesson, as I was about to go home.
"See you next week."
"Yes." Usually, my mom would pick me up, but she didn't show up, no matter how long I waited. Worried, Julie tried to call her.
"Strange, she's not answering. Did she say anything?"
I shook my head. Unable to wait any longer, I decided to walk home.
"Julie, I'll walk home." "I should come with you." "It's close and I'll stay in well-lit areas, it's fine."
"Okay." So, I went home without waiting for my mom. I didn't understand why she didn't come to pick me up, but I headed home anyway. When I got there, the front door, usually locked, was open.
"I'm home."
But no one replied. Feeling uneasy, I looked around the house.
"Why is nobody here? Dad? Mom?"
I called out to my parents, but the house remained silent. I hadn't noticed before, but there was a piece of paper on the table. It was a message from my parents.
"We never thought you lacked talent to this extent. You're not our child. Go wherever you like."
Reading it, I realized I had been abandoned. I couldn't even cry from the shock. Not knowing what to do, I ran to my teacher, Julie. I ran as hard as I could, ignoring the pain as I fell and scraped my knees.
"Julie."
"Hannah,
"What happened to you? You're all covered in wounds."
I bit my lip hard and told her about what happened at home.
"They said I'm just ordinary and don't need me.
I've been abandoned. What should I do? Julie seemed lost for words, shocked by the terrible events. After a while, she slowly spoke.
It's okay. You're not just ordinary.
She said this and gently embraced me. Her words gave me comfort, and tears flowed like a waterfall.
But now I'm all alone. You're not alone. I'll be with you.
Really?
Of course. I'll be with you from now on.
Okay. That night, I stayed at Julie's house. She was married, and her husband was there too. When he heard my story, he was as angry as if it had happened to him. As I fell asleep, I couldn't help but wish they were my real parents. The next day, I stayed at the house with Julie. We were looking for any clues about my family who had left me behind.
Is this the letter you mentioned yesterday?
Yes. Then, Julie noticed something.
Wait, there seems to be a second letter.
I hadn't expected there to be another one. Julie read it with a serious expression and sighed.
How could they do something so terrible? Julie? Oh, sorry. The letter says your grandmother will take care of you.
Grandma. Honestly, living with my grandmother was out of the question. After my grandfather's death, I never thought I would go back there. Julie seemed to understand how I felt and immediately contacted my grandmother. Apparently, she hadn't heard about it and was confused. Julie said they asked her to take me because it was too much trouble for them.
Really, what is with this family? Parents disappear and leave their daughter, and then they pass off their granddaughter because she's in too much trouble?
I could feel Julie's anger. I was so grateful to her for doing so much for me. Julie, let's go home.
Yes, let's go.
We packed some clothes and essentials in a bag and went back to Julie's house. Despite being away from my family, I spent the first few days crying. But Julie never abandoned me, always staying by my side. And she kept telling me that I was not just ordinary. A month had quickly passed since I was abandoned by my parents. I was starting to get used to this new life.
I have something to tell you. What is it?
I had made a decision. Until now, I had kept my violin in the closet, not wanting to be reminded of my family. But even though I was young, I realized I couldn't continue like this. I decided to start practicing again.
Please teach me violin again. Are you sure? It won't be too hard?
Yes, I want to practice a lot and get better.
Okay, if that's what you want, I'll support you with all my heart.
Thank you. Julie seemed genuinely happy.
Besides, I never told your mom or Sophia, but you have talent, Hannah.
Me?
Yes. If you practice hard, you'll become a great performer, much better than Sophia.
Can I really?
Yes, you can. The ones who will regret it are your family who abandoned you.
Hearing that, I was filled with motivation. At that time, Julie's eyes were serious, and she didn't seem to be lying. If it was really possible, I thought I might be able to prove my family wrong. And so began our intense training together. For me, being only 8 years old, it was extremely tough.
That's not good enough. Start over from the beginning.
Yes. I would wake up at 6 a.m. and practice for a little over an hour before school, and then again from the moment I got home until bedtime. I'm surprised I managed to keep it up. Then, one night, I overheard a conversation between Julie and her husband.
Hannah is still only 8. Isn't this training too harsh? Sometimes I think so too. Then why? But, you know, I can see in her eyes that she's determined to succeed. Those aren't the eyes of an 8-year-old anymore. It's almost scary how focused she is. Well, then I guess my role is to be a safe haven when she hits a wall. That would help a lot. Leave it to me. Hannah's already a part of our family.
I naturally found myself crying. I had always thought they might dislike me. But overhearing their conversation washed those fears away, and instead fueled my determination. Years went by, one after another.
You're doing well, you've improved a lot.
Thank you.
But don't be satisfied just yet. There's still so much more to learn.
Yes. 5 years after the start of our training, Julie had a proposal.
There's a concert in the next town. How about participating?
A concert?
I performed in one around your age.
Really?
It's a good chance to see how much you've improved. But the decision to participate is up to you, Hannah.
Of course, I'll participate. I replied immediately. There was no reason to refuse. And I wanted others to see the results of my daily practice.
Great. Then we don't have much time, let's practice.
Yes. The day of the concert arrived, but I unexpectedly saw some familiar faces. I immediately told Julie.
I just saw my family.
Really?
Yes. I haven't forgotten their faces for a single day since that day.
Are you okay?
Yes. I'm prepared for today, and I don't feel like losing to anyone. Well, it's not a competition today. Let's go.
From what I saw of my family, my parents looked a bit haggard. But at that moment, my only concern was the concert.
Are you nervous? It's almost time to perform. No, I'm just eager to start playing. Then you'll be fine. Since your family is here, let's show them what you've achieved. I'm off.
When Julie encouraged me backstage, I felt incredibly supported. It was a feeling I had never experienced while living with my family. My name was called, and I headed to the stage. And I started playing. It felt like the violin and I were one. I had never felt so free and joyful while performing. As the performance ended and I looked at the audience, almost everyone gave a standing ovation.
Wow!
I whispered. Glancing around, I noticed a gap in the crowd. My family was sitting there, the only ones not standing. I returned backstage.
That was a fantastic performance. Definitely the best.
Thank you, Julie. She hugged me. It hurt a little. But I was touched by her happiness.
Also, I saw your family, they looked pretty shocked. Probably regretting hearing my performance.
Serves them right. Just as we were about to leave on a high note, I was approached from behind. Hannah. Turning around, I saw my parents standing there.
Do you need something? Your performance earlier was wonderful. Yeah, who would have thought Hannah would grow so much?
My parents exchanged glances, displaying awkward smiles. I never felt more disgusted.
Well, I'm leaving now.
Let's go. I ignored them and started walking towards the exit. Then my mother grabbed my arm to stop me.
Wait a minute.
What?
Just listen. We need to talk.
What for now?
I have nothing to talk about with you. Don't say that. We're family, aren't we?
Those words made my anger reach its peak.
Don't joke with me. You were the ones who abandoned me. I don't need parents now.
Then my parents started to beg.
Please. Please, listen to us.
Desperately begging, they looked pathetic. It was hard to believe they were really my parents.
So, what's this talk about? Actually, Sophia isn't playing the violin anymore.
Yeah. Indeed, my sister wasn't at the concert. The best proof.
She's been caught up in other interests, hasn't touched the violin in over a year. Sophia might never play violin again.
I couldn't care less. They always praised her as a prodigy, and now they seemed so foolish. I knew their ulterior motive. They wanted to replace Sophia with me.
So, let's live together again. You finally realized your mistake, so.
Their self-centeredness tired me out.
Are you serious? We are. So, please. As if I'd live with you. Stop talking nonsense. Let's talk it over again. No way. If you really want to talk, stay there until I say it's okay.
I left them there and walked away. Looking back, they were sitting on the ground, heads down. How foolish. Once they abandoned their daughter, now they're the ones being abandoned.
Was that okay?
Yes, it was perfect.
You were very cool. I guess that settles it. I'm tired. Let's go home.
Yes, let's celebrate your great performance. It was a celebration 6 years in the making, and I was thrilled. Back home, we had a wonderful time celebrating my concert. It was the first peaceful moment in a long while.
I wish I could have been there.
There will be other chances. Sure, I'll play for you anytime. I'll look forward to it. After this concert, my name spread far and wide. I started receiving invitations to perform in various places, even being called a prodigy. But my parents wouldn't stay silent. They soon contacted Julie.
How irresponsible can you be? After neglecting her all this time.
They were apparently arguing, probably wanting to keep me with them again. I asked to take the phone. Hello.
What, more nonsense?
Hannah, maybe you should come back now. They really knew how to irritate me. No matter what, I had no intention of returning to them. You have Sophia, the genius. You don't need me.
Sophia's no good anymore.
I'd rather die than replace her.
How can you say that?
You don't even know what I've been through. Just don't contact me again. I hung up, effectively ending my relationship with my parents. Around the same time, I received an offer to study abroad. That was the first step in my career as a professional violinist. From now on, I will live my life free from my parents'